Well, welcome to Yada Yahweh Radio. Happy Shabbat. Hello, Kirk. How are you this fine evening?
I'm good. Happy
Good. We were talking about in our last program of all things Zephaniah. I mean, did you think that? And it's T-S, so it's the Tisday. P-H-N Yah. Zephaniah, which means Yahweh's treasures are stored up for another time. Do you ever think you'd be speaking about a prophecy in Zephaniah? Was that high on your agenda?
No, Zephaniah. I think I may have read Zephaniah years ago, just as you read through stuff, but I have no idea.
Yeah, Zephaniah and I were not buddies going through, but it is certainly speaking of peoples alive today. What we were trying to do is we were trying to understand who in the world was represented by Moab and Ammon in the last days, because Yahweh speaks specifically of destroying Moab in the last days. And he has a lot of prophecies about Moab and Yeshua 15 and 16, as well as Yirmiah 48. He has it throughout Ezekiel. God has a lot to say about Moab in the last days. And so what we were trying to do is to understand who Moab is. Because at the time that these Yahshua prophecies were written regarding Moab, it was around 700 BCE. Well, Moab ceased to exist, was destroyed by Yisrael. That's a story we'll read before long. Around 950 BCE. So having a prophecy that says, oh, by the way, Moab's going to be destroyed 150 years after Moab's destroyed would really not muster up highly on Yahweh's list of prophecies, would it?
You wouldn't think.
No.
But
no, that's like saying that, if I were to tell you tomorrow that Thomas Jefferson is going to contribute to the Declaration of Independence. That's not much of a prophecy.
Great call. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just recap a little bit of where we were. It says, indeed, Ajah, which is Gaza, shall be abandoned and rejected. Askelon, which means a pile of trash behind a gate of dung, will approach an inhabitable wasteland. Ashdod will be driven out and expelled, while Ekron, will be uprooted and tossed away. And when you read something like that, you know that you're dealing with a yet unfulfilled prophecy, that even though for many, many, many centuries, Gaza and Ashdod and Ekron et al. Were wholly uninhabited. They are heavily inhabited today. I mean, there's millions of Philistines. I was reading the news, Kushner, the Donald's son-in-law, has this new peace plan. He wants to offer the Philistines $50 billion. And the Philistines are rioting in protest and say, we'll never give up our right. It's our right of return. We're never going to sacrifice Palestine, and this is it's a laughable affront to the Palestinian people. It's too bad there isn't a politician that won't say, because here we're reading about these Philistine cities, that won't say, if you've got to present yourself as a lie, as a Palestinian people in Palestine, then you've got nothing to stand on. There's no such thing as a Palestinian. There's no such place as Palestine.
That's correct.
There was Philistia, and there were Philistines, but the last of them ceased to exist 2,800 years ago. So what in the world? What kind of a game are you playing here? And somebody would say, well, they've been called that for a long time. No, they haven't.
No, that was
even the Muslims and their Arabs living there, the Arab Muslims living there, didn't even use the term prior to well after their defeat in the War of Independence, in Israel's War of Independence. And, you want to say they want now to impose Israel back to UN 242. Well, if you wanted UN 242, Philistines, why did you reject it? You not only rejected it, you conjured up a plan to destroy Israel in 1948, in 1967, and 1974. 3 times you've launched wars against them because you wouldn't accept it. And now because you've been defeated 3 times, the world should say, oh, by the way, we'll give you the original agreement that you rejected? You ever bought a house or negotiated to purchase an office building or anything like that, Kirk?
Houses, yes.
Okay. When you're buying a house, if the seller offers that house for, let's just say, $1 million,
okay,
and you counter at $800,000, at that point, the seller can choose to counter or accept your offer. If they counter your offer because they're not willing to accept it at $900,000, is your offer binding of $800,000?
No, nothing's binding until they've offered you something, and then it's back to you. Do you take it or? Right,
and if you accept their offer, say of $900,000, then you have a deal. Mm-hmm. But if you've offered $800,000 and they counter at $900,000, your offer of $800,000 is now negated. They rejected it. Okay, it's no longer binding. It's the same thing with UN 242. They rejected it with the War of Independence against Israel in 1948. They rejected it again in 1967. They rejected it again in 1974.
And there's no going back.
There's no going back. You can't say, I want the deal that I rejected. Doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And you can't claim to be a Palestinian people. The DNA now is known of the Philistines.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't Arabians.
No.
They were Greeks. So, if the Greeks come and say, and these were, by the way, Greeks before Greece.
Yes.
They were from Macedonia, and it's the ethnicity of the tribes that would become Greece that were the Philistines. They immigrated into Israel about 300 years post-Abraham is when they immigrated into Israel. And so, and everything they brought with them based upon pottery and traditions and the like were the same traditions that were being celebrated, enjoyed, witnessed in Cyprus and in the Greek islands and in Greece itself, what became Greece. The ethnicity is clearly what we would ascribe to Greece. How many think are Greeks among the Philistines today?
There are none.
None. They're Arabs.
Of course. They all came over.
No.
Worked there.
No. And one of the things that I've said 1,000 times, so I want to say it 1,001 times. The only historical archive that describes a people named Philistines and a land called Philistia, with cities named Gaza and Ashkelon, is known because of Yahweh's witness through his prophets. In other words, if Yahweh is telling the truth, then there were such a people. They were invading terrorists, and they were wiped out by the Egyptians and the Assyrians. And there's no trace of them. If Yahweh's testimony is invalid, they never existed.
Yes, totally logical.
Take your pick. You can have one of the two. Those are the only two viable choices. That they're either invading terrorists who were savages of people, and that they were wiped out by the Assyrians and no longer exist. And there's absolutely no evidence of them from about 900 BCE, 850, 900 BCE. They've ceased to exist as people. The last city was destroyed actually by a Syrian. And so if Yahweh's testimony is accurate, and it is, they don't exist. And if it's inaccurate, there never was such a people. All there is to it. But there are a group of people that claim falsely to represent these people, and Yahweh was saying, yeah, they're going to be uprooted and tossed away. Their areas are going to be uninhabited wastelands. It says, woe to those who inhabit these places, those who are wickedly offensive, engaging in boisterous religious parades in the region along the sea, you nation of Cretans and Philistines. The word of Yahweh is against you, Canaan, you in the land of Philistine, you in the land of the Philistine. I will destroy you, such there will be no inhabitants remaining. You know, if every Philistinian were wiped off the planet this evening, the world would be a better place. I want to preface that by saying that's not our job. We are completely nonviolent. Use your words. So I'm just telling you that if Yahweh, who gave us all life, were to choose to truncate that life, because that life, like a virus, like a plague, has a net negative effect on everyone, then it would be beneficial if they were all wiped out.
Yeah.
But he's the only one that can do it, and he says he's going to do it. The word of Yahweh is against you, Canaan. In the land of the Philistine, I will destroy you, such that there be no inhabitants remaining. Good riddance. They're disgusting. God, these bums that have 40% unemployment, and you know the people writing the articles that would lead by saying because of Israeli sanctions. You know the only thing Israel sanctions is the import of anything that can be turned into a bomb. Do they care that Saudi Arabia and everybody else is providing these people with their subsistence? No. You want to give them food? Fine.
Go for it. Yeah.
Go for it. You want to give them rocket fuel? No. Not going to happen. That's all they do. Now, if making rockets and bombs is the core of their industry, then you can blame Israel for the terrorist industry failing. But that's the reality of it. And the wickedly offensive government district which sponsored boisterous religious parades along the seacoast shall become beautiful pastures with meadows for shepherds to graze their sheep, along with folds for their flocks.
Well, that's proper.
This, then, is the region for the remnant of Yahowah, on which they shall care for their sheep, the houses of Ashkelon, in which they shall lie down to rest in the evening. For surely Yahweh, their God, will be mindful of them, returning and restoring them from captivity. And what's the best thing he could possibly do?
Yeah.
The Philistines have decided that they want land that doesn't apply to them, and that even though they're coddled by the rest of the world and bribed by the rest of the world, they're going to throw a conniption fit, that they don't get to destroy Israel and wipe her off the face of the earth, and that they're somehow justified in claiming a land that is in a name that doesn't apply to them. And God says, okay, I heard what you said. You're out of here. My people get it. And I've always made this argument. If you don't like that, take it up with God. See how far you get.
Good luck.
Good luck with that. You know. I have heard the shameful taunts of Moab and the abusive rhetoric of the descendants of Ammon. So what you've got here then is that there has to be among the modern incarnation of Moab and Ammon, there have to be those that are supporting the Philistines. So all you have to do is look at what does Moab represent? socialist secular humanism, almost all socialist secular humanist institutions are hugely against Israel.
Yes.
And well, these people would claim to be enlightened. They're going to promote the agenda of the most arcane, unenlightened, misogynist doctrine in human history over the most enlightened nation and people in the entire region. And they're going to claim to be enlightened. And they're going to promote that which is absolutely and unequivocally untrue as truthful. And they claim to be enlightened. So the hell with Moab. The hell with you.
Well, that's what he says.
Yeah, that's what he says. And Ammon represents the tyrannical regimes, the tyrannical dictatorial regimes. He's talking about the 55 Islamic nations.
Yes.
And he says, you have insulted, ridiculed, and annoyed my people, making boastful statements over their territory, especially their borders. That is the rhetoric of today, is Islamic nations, Ammon, and socialist secular humanist nations and Christian nations, all making a big hubbub that is ridiculing and insulting and annoying with the borders of Israel and the chosen people being able to live within their borders. God's not happy with that rhetoric.
No.
If you're one of those that wants Israel to give up the West Bank and Jerusalem, and you want them to give up Gaza and become vulnerable to the Muslims, you need to know that God views your plan as insulting, as annoying, and that those who strive to restrict Israel's borders that way are going to be annihilated. It's an express ticket to Sheol. But you think it's enlightened, go ahead and play that card. See how well it turns out for you.
Yeah. You have to have a deep, deep-seated hate for Yahweh and the Torah, because without Yehudim, there is no Torah available. They kept it.
No.
They and
no prophets.
And the prophets.
Yeah, what percentage of Yahweh's prophets were Yehudim?
All of them, weren't they?
All of them.
Yeah. So I mean, without them, there is nothing. There is nothing there to. They kept the witness.
No.
A lot of times
God's unknowable apart from Yehudim. Yeah, these people like that idiot that was the neo-Nazi white supremacist, Ernst was his name, that murdered the elderly Jewish woman and shot a little girl, thinking he was doing this great service to his God. I got news for you. 100% of God's witnesses were Yehudim, without exception.
Yeah.
You know, so I may be a unique, and you may be an association, a Nakri, a foreigner that Yahweh says listen to, but we're only worth listening to because we're translating and conveying the message of Yahweh's messengers, and all of Yahweh's witnesses, all of his prophets were Yehudim, without exception.
There's nothing logical about it. You have to hate Yahweh. You have to hate Israel. You have to hate the people that throw it in your face. I guess that's the way
if you're
think about it.
Yisrael, you're anti-Yahweh. If you're anti-Yehudim, you're anti-Yahweh. And if you're anti-Yahweh, you're anti-God.
But you also have to be anti-Yosha.
Well, last time I checked, ethnically, he was a direct descendant of Dod, and Dod most certainly was Yahud.
Yeah.
And if you don't like the Torah, well, I'm sorry, he was Torah observant.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you and I'm just going to hint at it here. We came across something this past week, which was not as we expected. And we've said it's extremely difficult for me right now to stick through on this Moab thing, because I think it's essential for us to understand who Moab is, and we're going to see it through. But I really want to move to Volume 3, Chapters 1 and 2, where we pick up the story by translating the 1st through 5th Mizmor, and then deal with prophetic statements that highlight the concepts presented in the first 5 Mizmor.
Yeah, hold on to your hat.
Oh, there really is a Messiah.
Yes, there is.
There really is a Messiah. Stowed.
Oh.
And for those who would say, oh, no, Yosha was anointed. No, he wasn't.
I wouldn't.
Well, you can call Dode anointed. You can't call him Messiah. Well, where do you think the word Messiah comes from? There's only one Hebrew word that's translated Messiah. It's Mashiach. There's only one person that Yahweh Mashiach. 3 times that Yahweh says, he is my Mashiach. So if he is Yahweh's Mashiach, he is Yahweh's Messiah. How many times does Yahweh call Yosha his Mashiach?
No, he can be Messiah, doing the work of.
Yeah, absolutely. He was doing the work of Yah, which is to fulfill Pesach. Yahweh promised Abraham that I myself am going to provide the lamb. He did.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a difference between a shepherd and a sheep, right?
Absolutely.
They rely on one another. A shepherd without sheep is useless. Sheep without a shepherd are lost and aimless, vulnerable. Between Yosha and Dode, who is the shepherd and who is the sheep?
Well, Dode is the shepherd, of course.
And Yahweh, Yosha?
Yeah, the lamb.
He's the Passover lamb. He's absolutely the sheep.
Lamb.
The sheep is not the shepherd. The shepherd's not the sheep.
Mm-hmm. That shouldn't disturb anybody.
Right.
It's very obvious.
So there's God said, I'm not just giving Yisrael to Dode to be king of Yisrael forever, by the way, which means that Yosha cannot be the king of Israel.
I believe it's Olam, right?
And he says that Dode is my Mashiach, not Yosha. And he says that Dode is my shepherd, and that's you want to know what miracle I'm going to present to you? That I'm coming back with Dode. I'm coming back with Dode. That's my miracle. There's a second coming of Dode. So there really is a second coming.
Mm-hmm.
But it's Dode.
Yeah.
And then I'm just going to hint at this one, and then we're going to move on to our territory.
Okay.
So in Mizmor 71, there is a bodily resurrection, isn't there?
Yes, sir.
Before I even shared this with anybody, I gave it to you, and I gave it to Jackie, and I said, this is really something else. Before we share this, I want you to double-check what I've just translated, because it seems pretty clear to me. There really is a resurrection. But it's not Yosha.
Hmm.
So I don't know if you're prepared for that, all of the covenant members. I know that it's been tough to deal with the fact that we've been indoctrinated to think of Yosha as the Mashiach when it's Dode. We've been indoctrinated to think of Yosha as the King of Kings. No, it's Dode.
No.
And it makes sense, by the way, because is Yahweh a narcissist?
Hardly.
Why would Yahweh put a crown on a diminished manifestation of himself?
Yeah. Why would he?
Why would Yahweh want a diminished manifestation of himself to inherit Israel? He owns the entire universe. Why would he want a diminished manifestation of himself to be the king of Israel?
He works with associates, with people. The whole thing was to have a family.
Right. He wanted to have a son. He got one.
Got one.
Got one. Stud. So there is a bodily resurrection. Stud. That's what the words say. If you don't like it, go take it up with Yah. And it won't be long, I don't think, before that those 2 chapters will be posted. And if you disagree, have at it. Therefore, as I live. When Yahweh begins a statement, therefore, which is laken, ke-ani, therefore, as I live, Yahweh declares well in advance of its occurring. He doesn't very often start a prophecy that way, does he?
No, he really doesn't.
No. as I live. And at that point is, I'm telling you this based upon my very existence. I'm telling you this as if my very life depended on it, and so does yours.
Mm-hmm.
That's big stuff. You know, that there's one fundamental difference between Yahweh and all the religious gods. Yahweh actually exists. He's alive.
He created man.
It's a pretty significant difference, but that's it.
Yeah.
Therefore, as I live, declares well in advance of it occurring, Nahum, Yahweh, who dispatches the vast array of spiritual implements, Shabbat. The God, the Almighty God, Elohim, of Yisrael. You know, I have started doing something that Jackie has been flogging me to do for. She's a sweetheart, but she has really been annoyed with me for not doing this sooner. Evidently I've misrepresented in the chapter in Introduction to God on the 10 statements that Yahweh etched in stone. And that when I did them a long time ago, I may have inadvertently spoken of the perfect versus the imperfect in my analysis. So anyway, I promised her I'd go back and rewrite it, and I can't just fix that one thing. Of course, I've got to start at the beginning. And I was dealing with Elohah, which is the basis of El, and therefore Elohim, which is the plural of Elohah.
Uh-huh.
Because what I wanted to do is I wanted to figure out, why do we translate Elohah as God, and why is it that we're kind of conditioned to refer to it, well, as Mighty One or Almighty? You know, there's very little in El and Elohim and Elohah that speak of Almighty or Mighty One.
Yeah, usually it's a
really very little.
Mighty One, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a prediction where Yahweh speaks of a Gabor, but a Gabor is a mighty man. That's a fighter. It's Dode. When he speaks of Gabor, that's a mighty man. That's Dode. So El and Elohah, it's I didn't know this, but you know Elohah is based on Al. Does the name Al, the word Al, resonate with you?
Oh, certainly. Yes, with the Aleph.
What's an Al?
Yeah. Well,
an Al is the Passover lamb, isn't it? Correct?
Yes. Uh-huh.
An Al is what was caught with its karen, with its beaming light as horns in the thicket in that thorn bush on Mount Moriah when Yahweh said, "Don't harm the boy. I'm going to provide the lamb." It was an Al, wasn't it? That was the lamb.
Uh-huh.
And at the time, we analyzed it and said, you know, Al is more than just a male lamb. It also represents the upright pillar of the tabernacle. Al does. Mm-hmm. And Al is the frame of the door upon which a door opens and closes, secures the door and hinges the door so it can open and close. Well, that's the basis of the term. There's nothing there that says mighty, does it? No, what you're talking about there is a lamb that is the doorway to something extraordinarily important, and that is the central element in the tent and the witness, the upright pillar.
Yeah, so it can be, I was going to say it can be upright and strong.
Right. What is the first letter of El, Elohah, and Elohah is the basis of Elohim? What's the first letter?
Aleph.
Aleph. How was it drawn?
Done as a ram's head.
A ram's head.
Uh-huh.
Is that perhaps Yahweh saying that I'm one of the sheep? I want to be one with my sheep.
Yeah, he's the protective sheep. He's this. Yeah. All that is encompassed by the male realm. Yes. Right.
And isn't the second letter a lamed?
Uh-huh.
And what is a lamed?
Well, that's the shepherd's staff.
So what you have here is Yahweh defining his title by saying, I am a shepherd, looking after, protecting, leading, and securing my sheep, rescuing my sheep. And I'm also one with the sheep.
Right.
And in God's parlance, from his perspective, he says, I want to be one with my sheep. I want to be out there camping out with, living with my sheep, but I also want to lead my sheep. Those are those first two things that he conveys. And the next letter is the Wah, to increase, to secure, to support. And the Ah is the individual who stands up, looks up, and reaches up to God. Pretty hard to get out of that. Almighty.
Yeah, good point. You're absolutely right.
What you get is a shepherd living with his sheep that wants to protect them, enrich them, secure them, at least those who are observant, reaching up, standing up, looking up to him. Yeah. And if you look at letters, the Aleph is looking from right to left. First letter looking from right to left, isn't it? There's no Aleph in Yahweh's name, but the letter is pointed. It points to the left. The second letter is a Lamed. It's not in Yahweh's name, but it is looking left. The next two letters to the left of those two letters are both in Yahweh's name, aren't they? So you have a double pointing to two letters in Yahweh's name. Is that really good? Sort of good? Or really bad? That's as good as good gets, right? You've got two letters that are both pointed, and they're both pointed to two letters that are in Yahweh's name. That's as good as good gets.
Yeah. You sleep well on that one.
You sleep well on that one. So, the idea of Elohim from Eloah is that Yah's vision of his title is that he wants to live with his sheep, to be one with his sheep, but also to be the shepherd who nurtures and leads and guides and protects his sheep. Enriching and securing them, adding to them, empowering them, and them being the ones who stand up, reach up, look up to him, the observant individuals. By the way, Eloah, the Hebrew word for God, masculine or feminine?
Oh, it's feminine, as a hey.
It is, isn't it? Yahweh, God's one and only name, masculine or feminine?
Feminine.
So God's name is feminine, and the title he chooses for himself are both feminine. Isn't that interesting?
Yes. Always have felt so.
Yeah.
Nurturing. You know, it's all sides are invited in that.
Yeah. So I was an interesting distraction. I'm sorry. I was reading this statement, and it's impossible for me to read something like this if it was something that was that vivid in my mind. And listen, with Elohim, I didn't really get to a specific answer that I could use to translate. Really, all I got was, here's this full palette. Pick what you like.
Well, that was a pretty good
Therefore, as I live, declares Yahweh, well in advance of it occurring, the one who dispatches the vast array of spiritual implements, the Almighty God of Yisrael, of individuals who engage and endure with God. Surely, wow. I mean, at that point, God ought to have our attention. I'm telling you something really important here, right? If he's going to say, bubble gum is really chewy and sticky, you're going to want to know a lot about bubble gum. And this is as far out as Yahweh ever goes. Therefore, this is right and true. Ken, Che, as I live, declares Yahweh, in advance of it happening, Nahum, who dispatches the vast array of spiritual messengers, Shabbat, the Almighty God, Elohim, of Yisrael. Surely, Ken. What do you have to say that follows that?
They ship
Moab.
For an ongoing period, yes.
Yeah, Moab.
Moab.
For an ongoing period of time will actually come to be very similar to Haya Ka. Haya means to exist as. Ka means to be similar to. shall literally and continually become like and be acquainted to in the call imperfect. Call, genuinely, literally, actually. Imperfect, with ongoing implications. The verb haya, to exist. Ka, to be similar to. Moab, those of a questionable father, those who should question their father, shall for an ongoing period of time actually come to be very similar to Sodom, scorched.
Yes.
Okay, so we just spent 2 months of Shabbat programs, analyzing the conditions, everything that can be known about Sodom, didn't we?
Oh, yes.
The people were religious. They were into themselves. They wanted to dictate their terms on Lot. They said, Lot, what right do you have to judge us? So they were politically correct. Don't judge us. And so we've spent all this time trying to understand Sodom and what really existed there. And now Yahweh says, Moab, it's exactly as was Sodom. So what group of people act all, yet let us go talk to that angel over there. We want to give him a piece of our mind. We want to tell him what we believe. We want to pray to God. We don't want to listen to him. We don't want to listen to those messengers. We want to give him an earful. And oh, by the way, what right do you have to judge us? Move out of the way. We've got our own agenda. He's talking about Pauline Christians and socialist secular humanists.
Right.
God just said, Moab, if you want to understand Moab, look at Sodom. Moab is going to become identical to Sodom. And if you want to understand, he would say, and the descendants, Beni, of Ammon, pertaining to the family, related to the nation, family, and people, the descendants of Ben-Ami, offspring of nations, shall be compared to and associated with Amorah, authoritarian manipulation, oppressive and tyrannical, binding and twisting. A place owned and possessed by prickly and irritating weeds, and as salt pits, a lifeless ruin forever.
Yeah, that's easy pick there. Easy call there.
One of our covenant members was challenged something that I had said, which was that, I looked out from Masada, and from that vantage point, you could see the southern end of the Dead Sea, and I saw ruins of what looked like a city that had once existed on the western bank, the southwestern bank of the Dead Sea. And I said, my guess is that could well be Sodom. I was wrong. Masada, you see, is not really right below Jerusalem. It's south. And so what I was looking at would be the southern end of the Dead Sea. Well, the testimony about where Abraham and Lot went and where they looked and where the Malak said, let's go up that hill right there. You want to find the place that you need to go to protect yourself and your family and take full advantage of this, you go right up that hill right there. Well, that was Olives and Moriah. As it turns out, Sodom and Amorah were directly east of Jerusalem. If you look directly down from Olives into the Jordan Valley, just north of the Dead Sea, on the east side of the Jordan River, that is where Sodom was. They found it. And guess what? It's a lifeless ruin to this day. And they even found Zor, the city that Lot decided he was going to go to instead of climbing the hill of Moriah. They found Zor, lowly and little. It's right next to Mount Nebo, where the voice of the Torah died. That's where Moshe passed away.
Yeah, I'm looking at a map right currently, a photographic map, and there it is.
Mm-hmm. So all these places have been found. They are lifeless ruins forevermore. Now, this is the place where Yahweh has been taking us all along. The recognition that modern Moab is comparable to ancient Sodom. And that is to say, confused, belligerent, demanding, a sense of entitlement, twisted morality, and compromised thinking. To find those embodying these characteristics, Yisrael should turn west to see Moab in Christianity and socialist secular humanism. Then they should turn eastward to see Ammon and the authoritarian manipulation of the tyrannical Islamic regimes. Beyond their identification as is their annihilation. God hasn't invited Moab and Ammon to a tea party, but instead promised to deal with them as he did with Sodom and Gomorrah. This will not play out as a frenzied religious experience, but instead as the celebration of the complete obliteration of mankind's most popular and yet perverted ideals. I had a friend staying with me here as a friend back in my business days, and we were talking about what we do here. And I said, it must be this sense of tremendous responsibility to have been chosen by God to do these things. And I said, no, wrong way to look at it. I wasn't chosen. I got this opportunity by default because no one else wanted it. How many people want to go out and say, here's all the reasons that God despises patriotism, the military, politics, and religion?
Everything you support.
Everything that people celebrate and believe, your job is to go out and tell people that that's all nonsense. To promote it is to go to hell, and to believe it is to have your soul annihilated. And it's completely and totally wrong. And it doesn't matter what you think Christmas represents in your life or what worshiping God makes sense in your life. It's all Babylonian. It's rotten to the core. How many people want to go do that? How many people want to go out and risk your life to expose and condemn Islam? How many people that are willing to say, you know what I'm going to do here? I'm going to give up 8 to 10 hours a day, 6 days a week for 19 years. And by the way, when you write the books and do the shows, what you're going to make on it is nothing. I can see the line of people signing up for that right outside of my window right here.
He makes such an effective offer.
So don't tell me that you should really feel excited or somehow humbled that God chose you for this. Come on, there's nobody else signed up. Now, I don't want to pretend that it isn't the thrill of my life to be doing this, and that it's the most wonderful, fulfilling job in the world, because it is. And I don't want to say that this is any kind of sacrifice, because it's not. It's just that going into it, how would you sell it? Now that we're in it, how would you encourage somebody else to participate?
You just say
it's really that silly, right?
Yeah. Oh.
And yet it's wonderful. Yeah, and yet it's wonderful. And
I think it's great.
The bottom line is that I got this job by default. No one else wanted it. And then he said, well, how many people listen to this show and read the books on a regular basis? I said, well, before I answer that question, let me tell you what God has to say about numbers. Every time that he speaks of a broad and popular way, of something that the majority of people believe, he always says that it's deadly and destructive and that it'll lead to the annihilation of your soul. So if something's popular, if there's a lot of people joining in, you know you're wrong. God's been unequivocal about it. If what you're saying becomes popular, you know you're wrong. So we'll start there. God is astonishingly anti-religious, anti-political, anti-patriotic, anti-military. So you're not going to have a whole lot of people in this world that are going to give up all those things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the next thing is that in the second statement that he etched in stone, he said that, my message and my mercy, my enduring love is going to appeal to thousands who observe the terms and conditions of my covenant.
Yeah.
Well, thousands amongst billions is 1 in a million. So let's just start there and say, now that you know if what I was doing was popular, it would be wrong, and the most we could ever expect is thousands. Now, under that basis, yeah, we're doing great. We're exactly where you expect to be in terms of audience size. But, it's even then, it's not our doing. God would be happy if it was just Adam and Dode, maybe Abraham and Sarah. No, he doesn't need thousands and thousands of people. Now, God is telling us that these aren't just weeds, but the likes of nettles. They're prickly plants which secrete an irritating toxin. And Yahweh is going to leave a tiny patch of it as an eternal reminder of just how disgusting man becomes when he uses religion to inspire terrorist acts and then spits in God's face while he vomits on his children. That's how God sees all this. And those sticky, toxic thorns are going to be a reminder of man's perverted ideals, of man vomiting all over the chosen people in the promised land. With the reference to salt, Yahweh was saying that he's going to do to the modern incarnations of Moab and Ammon what he did to the woman who could not let go of her revolting past, the wife and mother who continued to long for the corrupting religious, political, conspiratorial, societal, and familial ideas of Sodom. That's why the reference to salt is here. God turned her into salt because she longed for the past. She longed for all that was wrong with the world. And it's going to happen again. As we turn the page, I am once again moved to tears. I've devoted 18 going on 19 years of my life to exposing the worst human behavior and the best God has to offer by way of instruction. And I only wish more were doing it. I would be I'm thrilled, like you, Kirk, if we didn't have this job by default. Because it's the most rewarding thing a man can do with his life and time. If nothing comes of this other than the enrichment of Yahweh's family, then, your life and mine have been well invested. Now listen to this. The remnant of my family shall take away their possessions, and the remnant of the most outstanding of my Gentiles shall receive their inheritance. The remnant of my family shall take away their possessions, and the remnant of the most outstanding, the remainder of the most set apart, the most uncommonly vocal, and soon to be abundantly enriched of my goy ani. Whoever thought that Yahweh would have a goy ani? Now, I did write this in the plural. It's not written plural in the text. It's written as singular in the text.
Boy.
Shall receive their inheritance. This friend of mine, we had a long, long talk today. And I was there with another covenant member, and at the long talk, he says, so what are you getting out of it? How are you compensated for this? And I said, there is no monetary compensation in terms of what we're doing. I ask God for three things. I hope that that I were given those opportunities. The three things I said is that there's such a consequence of what Paul did, of what Muhammad did, of what Hadrian did, what Akiba did, that I've asked for the honor of being just one of the witnesses at their trial against them. I've devoted a lot of my life to coming to know who they were, to expose and condemn them. I'd like the privilege of being to expose and condemn them at their trial. The second thing I've asked for, and I don't know if I'll get that or not. I mean, God doesn't need me, obviously, to do that. He's got much better witnesses than me. But I would sure like the opportunity. And the second thing I said is that I wanted to be in the back of the room. I've said this to you before, Kirk, and to our audience, our family before. I wanted the back of the room. I want to have the privilege of seeing the smile on Yahweh's face, and that of folks like yourself, the first time you embrace. I really would like to, if I played 1/1,000,000,000 of 1% of how it all happened, I want to enjoy the moment.
Sure.
I don't want any accolade. I don't want anybody to say anything, even look my direction. I would like to say, oh, that was a life well lived. Bringing an eternal smile to God's presence and to those who will live with Him forever. So that's the second thing I've asked for. And the third is that once we commence in eternity, I want no responsibility. I want to be one of the guys. I'd just like to go off with my friends and family members and explore and to have a grand old time and to have no responsibility whatsoever, just to be free to have the time of my life. Those are my three requests.
That's a pretty good request.
But those are pretty good. I think they're okay. I think I've got a reasonable chance of granting them. We'll see. But that's my three.
Remember, He's going to give you everything else. I mean, if He gives you those, that's
we're being enriched from 3 dimensions to 7.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool, right? Being enlightened by the brightest individual in the universe, that's pretty cool. Being enriched, that I get my share as you get your share of the universe, that's good. Being perfected, having a copy of Yahweh's guidance written inside of us, that's really good. Changing my last name so I'm Yada Yah, literally. That's pretty cool. That's good, and that's good for all of us.
Sure.
It's really great stuff. So these are just 3 incidental things that I think would be swell. And if they don't happen, so what? Life in eternity is going to be great.
Yeah, and there'd be no complaints.
Yeah.
But
so this seems to say differently, Kirk. And I'm not comfortable with this, but I am seeing it happen. And what God is saying is that, listen, the remnant of my people are going to inherit the world. There's 1,000 years we're going to celebrate Sukkah here, and Yahweh's family is going to inherit the world. But He says, there's a goy that's going to remain, and he's going to receive their inheritance. So, there's my family, the covenant family, and there's this goy out here. He's going to inherit this stuff. And it's one of those things, Kirk, that I didn't ask for. I don't want it to happen, and you didn't ask for it. And you don't want it to happen. But who are we? If God wants to enrich His children and give them something that they can enjoy, who are we to say, no, we're not going to allow you to enjoy doing that? That would be like me telling my son telling me that, no, Dad, I don't want the gift of the car, or I don't want the gift of you coming out to visit me. No, I don't want your gifts. Keep them. I don't want anything to do with the things you want to give me. No.
Will never come out of my mouth.
Right.
I'll take the Maserati.
If Yahweh wants to say there's, I want you to enjoy living here in Jerusalem with the family, but I understand you like boats, or Kirk, you like golf courses.
Mm-hmm.
You can teleport here. Do you want to live at Old Head, which is that beautiful golf course that's maybe even prettier than Pebble Beach? You want to live out there on the overlooking the Irish Sea, and Yada, you want to live on a boat bobbing up and down the Mediterranean and teleport into work on occasion? I mean, that's what he's suggesting here. It's his to give. That's what he wants to do. Okay.
Now, what is it about?
Not going to ask for it. Not looking for it.
Uh-huh. Does this make you uncomfortable? You started out, does it make you uncomfortable? Oh, this is cool.
Yeah, it does. It makes me uncomfortable. But, and in little places here and there now, I'm beginning to see this kind of thing beginning to happen. One day, before too long, I might even talk about it. But I'm not comfortable talking about it now. So what I wrote here, and I want to share, is that Goy was actually written singular in the text. And that's okay, because family was plural. Well, it's not plural. Family is singular. Yah only has one family, but a family includes a lot of people. And Yah's family includes both Yehudim and Goyim, children of the covenant. So everybody is going to inherit the possessions of those who have been opposed to him. Okay? But this is just one of those places where a singular, whether it's a Zachary, or it's a Toder, or something where Yah was saying, there's something going on here that I just want to bring your attention to it. I've noticed it. I'm paying attention to it. I'm all over it. I'm calling your attention to it. Here it is again. Goy was singular in the text. That is likely a reminder that very few of us will walk away from Babel. Very few of us will walk away from the confusion of man, from the muddling by commingling from our country, from politics, from patriotism, for conspiracy and anti-Semitism, from religion and societal customs. And fewer still will choose to be set apart, to stand up against the prevailing crowd, or to be uncommonly vocal in a world that shuts down and demeans and largely castrates those that are willing to speak their mind. Well, not their mind, but the truth. But for those who walk this walk along with us, there is the same inheritance that was afforded to Abraham, the same articulated by Moshe, the same inheritance that was celebrated by Dod. Well, most don't like this aspect of the job. It is one that I've come to relish. I realize that I'm not fit to carry Dod's sandals or to sit beside Elia or to clean Yosha's robes. But I find tremendous satisfaction in standing up against evil and exposing and condemning religious, political, conspiratorial, societal, economic, and militaristic aberrations of the truth to shatter myths. I did my flight training between this trip and my between this show and the last one. Mm-hmm. And every year I have to do recurrent training. I typically postpone it and I just do little flight updates. But this time I really did a full recurrent training class with a man I brought him in. He turned out to be a lieutenant colonel, so he did it to military standards. And in the midst of that flight training, we ended up talking about everything that you can imagine about the military, what was wrong with it, about patriotism. This was a lieutenant colonel. In fact, at one time, he was the responsible for the armed forces of Saudi Arabia. It's a totally U.S.-backed military. He was the attaché to Saudi Arabia for their military, the lead man. 2 tours in Vietnam, a Huey pilot, and we talked about the futility of that war, how we went in on a lie and we made a bad situation worse. He served in Afghanistan and in Iraq, and we talked about specifically how this country, based on lies, made bad situations worse. And we talked about the mindset of the military. They'd rather promote a lie than tell the truth. And we talked for hours and hours and hours. And a lot of this time, I'm doing very complicated maneuvers in the airplane. Mm-hmm. He would do things that I didn't think anyone in their right mind would ever do in a high-performance airplane. I've got a turbine. He shut down the engine. We're at 2,500 feet, flying, in and out of the clouds in South Florida. And he shut down the engine. Said, land the airplane. By the way, you only get one shot at this. This is not flying the simulator where I did that before. Uh-huh. But in the simulator, if I screw up, they reboot it and we do it again. Land the airplane. And the whole time we're talking about what's wrong with politics, what's wrong with the military, what's wrong with religion. Never missed a beat. And then we went into 60-degree steep turns and stalled the airplane in that configuration. The airplane's not even supposed to be survivable in that position. You wouldn't even do this in a simulator. And he has me do it in the airplane. And the whole time we're talking about all of these things. And the reason I bring this up at this point is that what this statement seems to suggest is that there's very few people that are going to be doing this. And that he said, I've been exposed to virtually every president of the United States and every leader of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I've worked with the heads of state of scores of foreign countries. I've never heard anyone that was able to articulate profound insights, all of which resonate. I can't argue with anything that you've said. Everything you said is supported by what I know to be true, and yet you went from one subject to another with a cadence to your voice and using evidence and reason that is one of the most profound experiences of my life.
Wow.
And so the idea here is that, okay, I don't want to do what we're doing now. I turned it down every possible way. I like writing. I don't like doing this. Why? Because I can't stand the sound of my voice. If you made me listen to one of these shows, I'd never do another one.
I wouldn't listen for the same reason about me.
Yeah. And so...
I was fired a long time ago.
Right. One of my closest friends says, you butcher every language. Your pronunciation of some of these words is just horrible. You're right. That's why I didn't want to do it. And yet, what Yah can do with a flawed implement, it's just amazing. If you're only willing. Now, I was asked by this friend of mine today, in doing all this stuff, what do you talk to God about? I said, why would I want to talk to God? Why wouldn't I just choose to listen to God?
That would be my answer. I got that part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Glad you said that.
He's really smart, and I've become a really good listener. I'm not kidding you. We talk all the time. But, most of my conversations with him are at the level of a 2-year-old. Wow. That's really good. I love that. It's being overwhelmed with the majesty of it. When I was talking to this friend today, several times I felt tears well up my eyes. I was just thinking about how meaningful all this is. And so, I'm I'm not able to contribute anything to a discussion with God. And he said, well, you've said that God spoke to you on many occasions. Yeah. My last conversation where God actually spoke to me and said, this is what I'm going to have you do. He was really sarcastic. It was fun. And I don't want to get into again what he said, but the deal is, I told this friend, I said, yeah, I've had conversations with God where he actually spoke directly to me. There is no reason for me to share that. I can't prove it. And we don't need any special revelation. There's nothing in that revelation that's going to make anybody else's life better.
Yeah.
No one's going to understand Yahweh better because I've shared what he told me. I'm not going to change anybody one iota. But listening to what Dode had to say, what he wrote, what what Yahweh inspired through what Yahweh inspired through Moshe, that can not only profoundly change will profoundly change everyone's life that listens to it and responds to it. But I can prove the source. I can prove that that's exactly what was said, unequivocally. Mm-hmm. And then I can prove that it was inspired by the creator of the universe because of prophecy. So why would you want to go any further than that? Plenty of material there, isn't there?
Are you kidding? Piles and piles and piles. So much there, and you go back the next time and you find some more.
Yes. This shall be an exchange. So Yahweh's doing something in exchange. Fair, right?
Mm-hmm.
This shall be an exchange for their undercutting, their unrelenting and inappropriate desire to elevate their status, because they have insulted and ridiculed while annoying, making boastful statements against the family of Yahweh, who dispatches the vast array of spiritual elements. What he's saying is, I'm going to reward those who did the thing that I wanted done, which is to expose and condemn those who are annoying me and my people. That was an unpopular job. And I want to thank them for doing it. That's what he's saying here.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
It's a job that I want done. I was been thinking a lot about why in the world is Yahweh just so enamored and so preoccupied and so fixated on Dode, beside the fact that he was the brightest man who ever lived and the most articulate man who ever lived. Yahweh's a fighter. Somebody's going to stand up and defend Israel, his people. He's all over that. He loves it. He loved Dode's logic.
Yeah.
And his commitment and his relentless devotion to the truth and willingness to share it. He was a man's man. He was real. He loved him. Still loves him. And Dode is the guy more than anyone else, more than Moshe, more than Yahshua, more than Yirmiyah. In fact, I would say more than every one of Yah's prophets combined. Dode is the guy that's constantly fixated on exposing and condemning the enemies of Yahweh, Yisrael, Yahudah, and himself.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that's really interesting about the Psalms that the Mizmor that we're going to get to, and when we move into chapters 1 and chapters 2 of Observations for our Time, is that Dode is actually asking Yisrael, why is it that you've so demeaned me? Why have you ignored me? Why have you chosen to overlook me? Do you have any idea of what I represent in the overall presentation of Yah's testimony? And yet you've relegated me to the guy with the slingshot. You've relegated me to a damn star that I had nothing to do with. You've relegated me to the guy that God liked because, well, I was loving and passionate. Now, come on. And Dode's saying, what's wrong with you? come you've missed all of this? Oh, you've got a whole religion devoted to falsely claiming that Yeshua was the Christ, the Messiah. Now, you don't have 1,000 people on the planet that are willing to recognize that David's actually the Messiah. People want to, 2.5 billion people that want to call Yeshua the King of Kings when the job has been already given to David. They want to call Jesus the Good Shepherd when God says, no, the Good Shepherd is David.
Now think about that in the light of time being existing. That happened.
Mm-hmm.
He was chosen for that purpose long before Yeshua, that branch, ever came along.
Not only chosen for it, Yeshua quoted David. Yahweh quotes David.
Yeah, both Yeshua and Yahweh.
If you are so insightful that God himself is quoting you, you are a little different than the average dude out there.
Yeah.
I like you a lot, Kirk. I don't hear God quoting you.
No, I take it in the spirit is given. Absolutely.
You heard me. I don't blabber to God.
Uh-huh.
God's not quoting me.
No.
I'm going to quote him. But God himself, Yahweh, through the prophet Yeshua, quoted David. Yeshua, at the most important moment of his life, when he is now becoming the Passover lamb, he cites David's 22nd Mizmor.
That's staggering.
The grass withers, the flower fades, that passage, the word of our God endures forever. It's in Yeshua, I think, 41.
Mm-hmm.
It's a direct citation out of one of David's Mizmor that he wrote 300 years earlier.
Everybody quotes him.
Yeah, but I was quoting David.
Yeah.
So this will be in exchange for undercutting their relentless and inappropriate desire to elevate their status. They have insulted and ridiculed while annoying, making boastful statements against the family. So Yahweh, that's why there is this benefit out there. And I guess if you're into that sort of thing, the benefit, is fair. So anybody who does what we're doing would be given that benefit. You can have my share. Gladly. When we demonstrate the courage and compassion, even just the will, to do the right thing for the right reason, God pays special attention and rewards our efforts. But even if he didn't, living our lives in such a way that we do something which pleases our Creator is a life well spent. And I think the irony of it is that in a world turned upside down, where lies are said to be true and Satan is worshipped as if he were God, where the chosen people are besmirched in hoaxes such as the protocols of the elders of Zion, rather than regarded for having brought us the word of God, it's really good to be different, to condemn when man praises.
Here.
Now, we have been told that religion brings man to God, that faith is good, but not by Yahweh. Listen to this. And among the prophets of Samaria, I witnessed something repulsive, a foolish prayer and a stupid request that I loathed. They prophesied concerning the message in the Lord, Baal, and they led my people Yisrael astray, causing them to wander away. And also among the prophets of Jerusalem, I have seen an abomination, shockingly horrible. They are engaged in religious adultery, and they walk about lying. They empower themselves while strengthening the hand of evil, of perversion, of that which is noxious and malignant, such that not a single solitary man returns from his pastor's evil, his friend's wrongdoing, or his neighbor's perversity. To me, all of them have become like Sodom, like scorched. And all of them are like the inhabitants of Gomorrah. Therefore, this is what Yahweh, the vast array of spiritual implements, says concerning these religious prophets. Behold, I will cause them to consume bitter and noxious substances, and will make them drink toxic and poisonous water. Because from those who claim to speak for God as prophets in Jerusalem, that which is common, ungodly, and hypocritical, that has gone out throughout the land and until all the earth. Yirmiah 12 through 15. Wow. Yahweh says, I've witnessed something repulsive, a foolish prayer, a stupid request that I loathe. This idea that let's pray to God, let's bless our food. Will somebody lead us in the Lord's Prayer? Our God says, I've witnessed something repulsive, a foolish prayer, a stupid request. And they prophesied, they spoke concerning the message of the Lord, of Baal, of the one who seeks to possess, to lord over, to own and control, Satan. So there's nothing that God hates more, that I loathe and request, than speaking out in the name of the Lord. If you say, in the Lord's name we pray, God thinks that's repulsive.
He wrote it in the tablet, too.
You know,
don't bring my name into your crap.
Yeah, they don't speak in Yahweh's name, but they sure as hell will speak in the Lord's name. And God says it's just repulsive. Yeah. It's disgusting. Then among the prophets of Jerusalem, even in Jerusalem, I have seen an abomination, shockingly horrible. They're engaged in religious adultery. Na'af. They're unfaithful and unreliable, participating in idolatrous worship. And they walk about lying. I don't like it, but it is nonetheless true. Paul was a Jew. Akiba, a Jew. Muhammad, a Jew. Adolf Hitler is Jew. Adam Weishaupt, yeah, he was a Jew. When you look at some of the most nefarious individuals in human history, they're Jews. It isn't good. God's got to be so upset with his people for promoting lies. I just wish it wasn't so. They empower themselves while strengthening the hand of evil. Perversion of that which is noxious and malignant, such that not a single solitary man returns from their pastors, their friends, their neighbors' perversity. You know, Yahweh's made it really clear in Yeshua. This happens to be Yirmiah. I opened the door to my home, and there was no one there. Passover's door. This is the threshold of matzah. This is how you become a member of Yahweh's family and benefit from the covenant, the purpose of Pesach and matzah, and a Bakorim leading to Shabuah. I opened the door of my home, and there wasn't a single person there. Not one.
Make you cry.
And he says here, no one. They were so bad with their lies. There was so much playing in the hand of evil. There wasn't a single solitary man. So for those that would have a conniption fit, that the words say that there is a choder, that there's a neck, that there's a nakri and nakar, and that there's a goy that I'm going to take care of, and that with this nakar, who by the way is named Yada, you better listen to what he has to say, and you better act upon it.
It goes for everybody. It ain't just Yehudim.
You know,
you want to get to that door.
The reason that exists, you know, if you don't like it and you're Yisrael, and some stinking goy that's flawed up the wazoo that can't even pronounce half the words correctly is the one bringing you this message. Figure out why that's the case. God just told you.
Mm-hmm.
It's because you all shirked your responsibility. Because there was not one of you that was willing to do it. That's the only reason this is happening. It's God's way of saying, if I can't work through one of you, I'll go to the people that you despise, a goy, and he'll bring this message to you. But I'll tell you what, you better listen, because you've got a lot more chances, a lot more offers. There's no Yehudim out there that's going to bring this to you. You better listen. But God's saying it's not one of you that's returning. To me, all of them are like Sodom. All of them are like Gomorrah. Therefore, this is what Yahweh, the vast array of spiritual influence, says concerning these prophets. Behold, I will cause them to consume noxious substances. Do you think that God is doing that just because he's mean-spirited? Why is he going to have the purveyors of religion, those that he equates to Sodom and Gomorrah, why is he going to have them consume noxious substance?
Well, if you had said Paul, well, that would be the disease. So I mean, they love it, I guess. If
your influence on humanity is to poison them, with your deadly plague, what is the appropriate recompense for that?
Well, you have to kill the plague.
Right. If you're busy strengthening the hand of evil by lying, what's the antidote for that?
Yeah,
right. What's fair to somebody that has used lies to mislead and has spewed out this toxic poison? What's the appropriate response? God's going to make them drink their own poison.
Own poison, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
By your own hand.
You pass this around, now you drink it.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is common and therefore ungodly. What you're doing is common and therefore hypocritical. And what you've done has been conveyed to all the earth. Men lie, and none more than those who are religious and claim to speak for God. The problem isn't too little faith, but instead too much of it. Religion, comprised by those who claim to speak for God, is the hellish problem that Yahweh found so obnoxious that he rid the world of the likes of Sodom and Gomorrah. It's a poorly recognized fact, but most of the world's religions were founded by Jews. These include Christianity, Paul, Judaism, Akiba, Islam, Muhammad, multiculturalism and political correctness, Weishaupt, communism, Lenin and Trotsky, even Hitler, the founder of the Third Reich and Nazi religion, had Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jewish ethnicity. Stunning, really. Since the purpose of this is to understand how Moab is being manifest in the world today, contentions flared once again between Moab and Israel because of the pagan religious community of Moab claimed the land that that Yahweh had given to Israel, notably the tribes of Reuben and Gad. By the way, one of the things when I was rendering God from Eloah and El and Elohim, and I just wanted to point out, I said, all you nincompoops out there that are writing G-D and you can't say God, isn't there one of the 12 tribes of Israel named Gad?
Yes.
GD?
Mm-hmm.
Right? GD? There is a pagan god named Gad. There is no pagan god named God. Do you know there is a pagan god named El? Happened to be the chief god of the Canaanites. Do you think that God is going to ask us to never do something that he always does?
Yeah.
Never speak the name of a pagan god? Last time I checked, it was Yahweh who just told us that the thing I have against them is they're speaking in the name of the Lord.
Baal, yeah.
Yeah, Baal. Yahweh is constantly naming false gods. I don't have any problem if we use their names to expose and condemn them.
Yeah.
And this idea that you have to write G-D, well, you're just not thinking. Because El can be the real God or a false one. Elohim, the real God or false ones.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a name. It's a title. So, Bamidbar, Numbers 21, Shaphat, Judges 3:11, Samuel, 1 Samuel 14, Melech, 2 Kings 3. These are all places where Moab was claiming the land of Israel. And they could be symbolic of Christians and socialist secular humanists attempting to take Israel away from Yehudah and give it to Muslims, thereby censoring the voice that undermines their belief. It is interesting, however, in this regard, that Yahweh had previously said, "Do not harass the Moabites or provoke them to war, for I will not give you any part of their land. I have given Ar to the descendants of Lot as a possession." The Badim, Deuteronomy 2:9. Yahweh says, don't harass Moab. Don't provoke them to war, for I will not give you any part of their land. And yet we're about to read a story where the king of Israel and the king of Yehudah go off to take Moab. Not only to harass them, to wipe them out, to kill them to the last, and to take their land. Now, how could you justify, you're a king of Israel, you're a king of Yehudah, how could you justify going into Moab, who did not attack you? Their crime was they stopped paying tribute. How would you justify, under these conditions, harassing them, killing them, and taking their land? Is there any part of this that is difficult to understand? Do not harass the Moabites. Do not provoke them to anger, for I will not give you any part of their land. I have given Ar to the descendants of Lot as a possession. The Badim 2:9. Therefore, Israel was right in wanting to remove the Moabites from occupying territory given to Reuben and Gad, but wrong to invade the neighboring territory on the far side of the Dead Sea.
Yeah. East of the Dead Sea, right.
Right. There is also a connection to the bad boys of Israel, a notable conflict between the Moabites and Israel that was fought by the tribe of Benjamin, where Moab joined forces with the dreaded Amalekites and the Ammonites. Empowered, the Moabites were unsuccessful during this period. And their object was to abuse Yisrael, but the subjugation of Yisrael, every momentarily by Moab, led to the assassination of the Moab king, Eglon, by the Benjamite Shaphat judge, Ehud ben Gurah. Benjamin then rubbed salt in the open wound by leading an army against the Moabite people, killing many of them along the Jordan River. This story is told in Shaphat, Judges 3:12 through 30. On the other hand, Yehudah, and particularly David, had it briefly incorporated Moab into the kingdom as a vassal state. I would ask you, Kirk,
Yeah.
What relationship did Lot have to Abraham?
He was his nephew.
Yeah.
The same bloodline.
Right. Who was the father of Lot then? Abraham's brother.
Yeah.
Abraham's brother.
Yeah, I can't remember.
And
Go ahead.
yeah, it was Abraham's brother. It was the father of Lot. So, how would, from an ethnic point of view, because Abraham's wife Sarah was Abraham's half sister, correct?
Yeah. You couldn't get. Yes.
And Lot's father was Abraham's brother, correct?
Right.
So why don't you tell me what the difference would be in terms of ethnicity, genetics between Lot's descendants and Jacob's descendants?
None.
Nothing?
Overriding went up.
Zilch? Nothing. That is the answer. Zip, zilch, nothing.
Yeah.
And by the way, in terms of Lot and the pool of his DNA,
mm-hmm.
Who did Moab? Whose kid was Moab?
That was Lot again with the daughters.
That's correct. So you've got Lot and his daughters giving birth to Ammon and Moab, right?
Exactly.
Ammon and Moab ethnically are identical to Israel. So Ruth, for example, said, your people are my people, your God is my God. There's one Torah for all of us. When she made that declaration, by the way, the people were the same. Ethnically. The difference was culturally.
Yeah.
Their religion, their politics, their social status. You know the single most prominent and unique thing about the Moabite religion? They were the most aggressive of their time in human sacrifice.
Oh.
They would sacrifice up to 10,000 humans to their gods at one time.
How do you
know,
do
the
that with
Aztecs, the Incas, the Mayans, they all participated in human sacrifice. The Polynesians, and throughout the South Pacific and Hawaii, they all participated heavily in human sacrifice. So did the Romans, so did the Greeks, so did the Carthaginians, so did the Spartans. Mankind, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, they all participated in human sacrifice. In fact, we traced it to the point that there were 10,000, 15,000 people killed in one day to be the servants in the afterlife of a king of Sumer and where Abraham came from. But the one thing that was unique at this time amongst the Moabites is that in their religion, they would sacrifice up to 10,000 people a day. It's pretty disgusting. And by the way, the sacrifice of 10,000 people a day, where Yahweh tells us that the thing that finally ended the Israel's conquest of Moab was watching the king burn his own son alive on the wall of the city when Israel was besieging them and saying, what in the hell have we done? That was one person. And so Yahweh told us they had this proclivity. But there are testaments to Moab doing this. Moab is pretty well known because of they wrote in a language the world knows. They wrote in Hebrew. Mm-hmm. And they left evidence of what they had done. And there's one tablet where the king of Moab is bragging about the human sacrifice of 10,000 souls. Well, by the way, I would always ask those who were participating in such a thing, if the only way to satisfy your God is to kill other people, to satiate his bloodlust, what makes you think that he is going to value your life?
Yeah.
How do you make that equation, that leap of faith from my God wants me to make it rain and for me to live, he demands that I kill other humans. Mm-hmm. How would that resonate that a God that has such bloodlust that he wants you to kill other humans is going to somehow value your life?
Well, it's a valid point that you make in this chapter about the United States. We do the same thing. We kill our sons to save us. I mean, what?
Yeah.
All our wars are for what?
For what? Making a bad situation worse?
Well, I mean, who among the wars we go to ever attacks us?
Nobody. Well, the Japanese did bomb Pearl Harbor, and so you have one instance of America saying, all right, well, they did bomb Pearl Harbor. World War I, we have no basis of going in. The Lusitania was deliberately sunk and arranged to be sunk by Churchill and Woodrow Wilson and Colonel House. So we had no basis, so we fabricated that war. They remember the Maine and the Spanish-American War, we fabricated it, the reason for doing that. We fabricated the reasons for the Mexican-American War. We fabricated the reasons for the Indian Wars. Mm-hmm. We fabricated the reason for the Vietnam War. We fabricated the reasons for the Korean War. And with World War II, it's true that the Japanese did bomb Pearl Harbor. We knew it was going to happen. We did everything we could to make our battleships, which we knew were worthless anyway, vulnerable. We saw them on radar. We ignored them. Did everything we could so that the country could go off to war and that the president be a wartime president and do what he wanted to do. But beyond that, why would any moral nation sacrifice 300,000 lives of their own people and kill 1 million civilians to avenge the death of 3,000? What's the morality of that?
None.
What's the morality of waiting 3 years to invade Europe and then send your sons up against cliffs that have been heavily reinforced the previous 3 years to shoot them like they were in a shooting gallery?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, didn't anybody ever hear of Greece? Where there are no hills where you can walk on the beaches, there's no high point, there's no established garrisons.
No army, no big army down there.
Right. Anybody ever hear of Greece? Man, what in the hell is wrong with us? And we celebrate this like we're some great, powerful nation. Here we go and we side with Soviet Union in World War II, and we left Europe worse than we found it. And then we celebrated like we're the great victors. Like we are the ones that really kicked some Japanese butt in World War II, firebombing civilians day in and day out.
Yeah.
Killing hundreds of thousands of civilians and finally nuking, not military targets. We dropped nukes on 2 civilian targets.
Yes.
And we're proud of ourselves. What the hell's wrong with us? Now, the Japanese had it coming. I'm not going to say the Japanese didn't have it coming. What they did in the Philippines, what they did in China, what they did in Korea, they're revolting. You could have killed 10 times more of them. It wouldn't bother me at all. Because that civilization was repulsive in what they did. And the women were absolutely as guilty as were the men. Same thing is true with Nazi Germany. Mm-hmm. They were just absolutely as guilty. The Russians came in and gang raped the women. Too damn bad. Wouldn't have done it. But don't look at them as innocent. I mean, all you need to do is go read what I read a week ago on the persecution of gypsies, the Roma, and then of Jews, and by the Nazis and the Ukrainians and the Poles et al. Throughout Europe. And over again, and the details and the breadth of it. Long before the Nazis went into Poland to establish Auschwitz, there were Jewish ghettos. Long before Hitler invaded Russia, the majority of the world's Jewish population lived in Russia, and they lived in ghettos. They had no rights. Long before Nazi Germany and the Ukrainians were prosecuting and harassing Jews. So were the Greeks. So were Muslims the world over. Killing them if it was sport. And so, that's the world as it really is. And we really ought to understand it, to deal with the truth the way the truth is. Now, that doesn't exonerate Israel for responding badly, but it is the history of man to do the wrong thing and to celebrate it. And in this particular case, that while Dod was the one person that had an decent relationship with Moab. For example, Yah's beloved son sent his mother and father to Moab when King Shaul was pursuing them. However, it wasn't always peaceful. He put down a Moabite advance. Dod is said to have systematically executed 2 out of every 3 Moabite captives in 2 Samuel 8:2. Thereafter, under King Rehoboam, Moab was all but absorbed into the northern kingdom. The final confrontation with the kingdom of Moab occurred, I think I said 950, is actually 850 BCE. I misspoke. I was off by 100 years. 850 BCE. It was 150 years before Yeshua penned the words in his prophecy. It was during the reign of Jehoram. It incorporates the witness of Elisha, the prophet who followed Eliah's footsteps. The final episode in the nation's life is told in 2 Melechim, 2 Kings. It is nearly as insightful and moving as that which we've already considered. So we're going to begin this next week, but I just want to introduce it. It's one of the things that you ought to get comfortable. You ought to be prepared. Be prepared to be amazed.
Yeah.
Truly to be amazed.
And it needs, if you look at the names, like when you wrote them Eliah instead of Elijah, and you've got, first of all, the first prophet says Yah is God, and the second was named say God, and Yah, and God is the one who saves. I mean,
yeah. Well, Elisha is God saves.
God saves.
And Eliah is Yah is God.
Yeah. I was just looking at it and saying, oh, duh.
Yeah. And so by the way,
everything you look at is a message.
Right. From my personal perspective, it doesn't mean anything other than my personal perspective. Uh-huh. The coolest dude who ever lived, just cool dude, a guy that I'd like to hang with just because you just don't know what's going to come out the guy's mouth next, but you're going to bust up laughing and you're going to grin from ear to ear. The guy with words, the guy that was the funniest by far. If God has a Bob Hope, it's Eliah.
Yeah.
Who was the guy that God called and he said, there's going to be 2 witnesses. I'm naming one of them. The one I'm naming is Eliah. Why do you think that God named Eliah, of all people, to be the witness in the last days? Why? Because he's got a sense of humor. It is really shitty stuff that's taking place. God's got a sense of humor. God's comedian is Eliah. Dude is really funny. But the guy that studied under him, Elisha, yeah, God saves, he's funny too.
Yeah.
But he's also really blunt. Here's a guy that told the most powerful person in his world,
yes,
that I think you're absolutely disgusting. What do I have to do with you?
Yeah, I read that today too.
He's standing outside with his entire army, and he's telling the most powerful person in the region, what in the hell do I have to do with you?
Why should I can't spend a second with you?
You're a speck of dirt that I would flick away. You're worse than
you can do that when Yah's on your side. When you own Yah's side.
Yeah, you can go write a book and do 10,000 shows exposing and condemning Islam.
Yeah.
If it's what Yah wants you to do.
Uh-huh.
You can tell the king of Israel to go stuff it. If you're speak for God, right? And he did.
Yeah. Yes, he did.
So these guys, this is going to be a spectacular review. It's I can't say that it has the humor of Elia with the Moabites. I'm telling them what. I know Baal Peor is a busy god, and he's got 850 prophets here. You might be wearing him out. He may be taking a nap. We'll wait. Oh, what's that? Oh, maybe now he needs to take a dump. I'm sure there's a bathroom out there someplace. We'll let your God finish his business, and then we'll commence this. How about that? I mean, dude was funny.
Yeah.
This story that we're going to consider has in it one of the most poignant thoughts. First of all, there's two aspects of it. One aspect of it is conspiracy. The king of Israel tries to promote a conspiracy that's as dumb as contrails, as dumb as reptilian overlords, as dumb as the blame the Jews, the protocols of the elders of Zion. Yeah. He's got the Larryites would have their conspiracy of those school shootings and the mass shootings were all a government plot. 9/11 didn't happen. Contrails and chemtrails and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we're talking about a really stupid, insane conspiracy. And so that's part of it. God's going to expose and condemn the whole notion of conspiracy in this story. And then he's going to tell Israel, you could do with the Moabites whatever you want. I don't really give a crap. Don't really care. And God doesn't. I mean, he's going to destroy them all in the last days, so doesn't care. When Dode wants to wipe him out, have at it, man. They're a blight on the world. People that are religious and political, they're scum. You want to get rid of them, that's your call. But I want you to understand, whatever you choose to do to them is going to be done to you. So if you hunt them down, oppress them, ravage them, kill them, understand that's what's going to happen to you. You are going to choose your own fate and the fate of your people by how you respond to Moab.
Well, you can't say it's not
when we consider that, and then what happened to Israel thereafter, you're going to want to be ready for this. That's why this whole discussion of Moab is so important, is that Israel chose its own fate. I've heard so many Jews, they say, look at what's happened to my people, look what's happened to my faith, look at my parents, I don't want any part of this. I don't want to be this chosen people. Go away, God. And my response is always the same. God chose you. You didn't choose him. Don't go blame God for being the chosen people and you don't like your life. He chose you. You didn't choose him. You can't blame him unless you chose him. If you chose him and he disappointed you, have at it. But you didn't choose him. It's like the Muslims in UN 242. You rejected him. You rejected the decree. You can't have it imposed now. Well, this story of Israel is going to be that story. God says you can do whatever you want to with them. I frankly don't care. But I want you to know that since you're here for the wrong reasons, whatever you do to them is going to be done to you. So it's pretty sobering. It's quite a story. And that's where we're going to begin this time next week. And Kirk, I'm still not positive we're going to get through the Moab chapters, because there's two of them, without turning to the first 5 minutes more on what we learned about Dode, because that's life-changing. Yeah, that's tidal wave. In fact, I asked you the other day, you would ask me a question. In fact, I'll just end the question because we're not broadcasting now, and so the only people who are going to listen to this are those that are really, really dedicated to learning what we're talking about here. But you asked me a question that I ignored. You said, "Do you think we'll ever see Yosha again?"
Mm-hmm.
I didn't answer your question, did I?
No, sir.
Passed right over it. And I passed right over it because it was my conclusion at the time that most of those who listen to this program are not prepared for that answer.
Yes, understood.
Yep. And the answer is literally no. Symbolically, yes.
Yeah.
In reality, no. In reality, yes. If the question is, do we will ever see him again, the answer is no. Will ever experience him again, the answer is yes.
I understand that.
Yeah, and the reason that it's complicated like that, will we ever see him again? No. Will we ever experience him again? Yes. Yes, we will. Is because we have to appreciate who Yahweh is. And while Yahweh is enormously large and as a seventh dimensional being, as a being that created the entire universe, Yosha and the set-apart spirit are both parts of Yahweh set apart from him. And we're going to reach a time where there is no function whatsoever to Yosha being set apart from Yahweh. When Yahweh says, "I'm coming back and I'm bringing Dode with me," where's there room for a diminished manifestation of Yahweh?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
He says, "I'm coming back," and the miracle is, "I'm bringing Dode with me." Where, if Yahweh's coming back, where does a diminished manifestation of him fit into that equation?
It really can't.
It just doesn't.
No.
And what does the Torah say about the Pesach lamb?
Well, the Pesach
destroyed at the end of Pesach.
Destroyed. You have to.
Served its purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Really important purpose. Served its purpose. Purpose is over. The Pesach lamb is destroyed. So, Yosha is the most set apart as a diminished manifestation of Yahweh. It's part of Yahweh's nature. When Yahweh said, "I'm going to provide the lamb is part of Yahweh. When we meet with Yahweh, we're going to see the completion, the completeness of Yahweh, and that will include Yosha. Is Yosha going to be visible? No, it's just part of who Yahweh is, part of what he has done. That willingness to make that sacrifice is part of the persona of Yahweh. We're going to experience the totality of Yahweh, including that part of him that made the sacrifice on our behalf for Pesach.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not going to see it. Yosha.
I had this, going through this material the last few weeks, it was very much like the first time I was reading Yahowah, and Tara and I were, sharing back and forth. She reads so fast, she was, get ahead of me. I guess she does what you do to me.
You married above your station.
But I'm still on page 13, and you're right up to 56, and I want to know that too. But I read slow. But other than that, it was just so. It was like, this is fantastic, but it's also exactly all the parts fall in. Everything fits.
Yes.
It all makes sense. It's like, well, of course that's the way it works. It has to work that way. It's like the other day, and I'll repeat what I told you, is the other day when you said to me, well, don't forget, that Yosha, once his body was destroyed, you that full-on Yahweh in the being of his soul. That's Yahweh's soul. So now it's Yahweh doing the saving, which all of a sudden the light came on. All this time I've been trying to figure out, okay, Yahweh saves, but it's Yosha. No, it's not. It's Yahweh. Right? And then
Yosha's soul, the soul that went to Sheol, is Yahweh's soul. Yahweh had a soul specifically for that purpose.
For that purpose, I understand, yeah. So it's
Yahweh's soul.
Beyond that.
Right. And the Passover lamb, where Yahweh says, I'm going to provide the Passover lamb. The Passover lamb became nothing more than a perfect representative of sacrificial lamb of Pesach, but the Spirit of Yahweh was no longer on him. In fact, Jackie does the edits of these books, which a lot of people do, but she's been the most dedicated to it. And when I was speaking at the end of the chapter 2, and I was speaking of Yosha, quoting Dode at the most important moment of his life, and I wrote a lowercase h for he.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason for that.
Mm-hmm. He's
just said, my God, why have you separated from me? He's just a Passover lamb at that point.
Yeah.
Lowercase he.
Yeah.
If you're speaking of Yosha, prior to the Spirit of Yahweh coming upon him in the Jordan River, it's a lowercase h for he. And once the Spirit leaves him, it's a lowercase h for he. Now, we need to understand what Yahusha represents and what he doesn't represent. And this notion that God would crown a diminished manifestation of himself, that he would provide an inheritance to a diminished manifestation of himself. That
you just can't. No.
It's just so inconsistent with not only who he is, but who he must be.
Yes. Even better put, yes.
It's even inconsistent with who Yosha is.
Mm-hmm.
It's inconsistent with the prime purpose of creation. The prime purpose of creation was to experience a family, to be able to enrich the children and to grow by enriching your children.
Yeah.
Yosha's not a God's child. He's a set-apart, diminished manifestation of Yahweh. Why do you think Yosha referred to himself as the Son of Man?
Mm-hmm. Get it?
Yeah, it's God created the entire universe because he wanted to enjoy a family. That the aspect of Yahweh that is Yosha was with him long before he created the universe. If all he wanted to do was elevate and promote a diminished manifestation of himself, he sure as hell didn't need to create this universe or other life, did he?
No. Well, it is self-evident. I mean, it has to be that way.
It is, but you really got to think about it because we've been so indoctrinated in this myth, and there's now the fastest growing religion in Israel is Jews for Jesus and the Messianics.
Yeah, that is just so.
And I just constantly want to say, like, I know the first time that I translated Mashiach in relationship to Dode as Messiah, and I got back at it. They said, no, anointed. But wait a minute. If there is a Messiah, there's only one Hebrew word that can be translated Messiah, transliterated Messiah. It's Mashiach.
Mm-hmm.
And it's used in conjunction with Dode. So if Dode is not the Mashiach Messiah, there isn't one.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, it's that simple. There is no other word for Messiah but Mashiach. And so if you want to have a Messiah, then it's Dode.
Mm-hmm.
And Dode's not just a guy that Yahweh saw to that was Mashiach, anointed as the Messiah once, but twice, actually 3 times.
Okay.
It's Yahweh saying, he is my Mashiach. He's my Messiah.
Well, I did a little research on that, and no matter what lexicon you go to, that's exactly what you'll derive if you look him up. It is. That is the way it is. He is the anointed.
It's just the way it is. I can understand how there's a lot of people who are going to be really upset with this.
Sorry, but
it is the way it is. I mean, please, I guess if you want to be mad at me, have at it. I really don't care.
Yeah.
But the argument that you have, if you want to cling to this notion that Yosha is the Mashiach, not Dode, is you've got to negate what God said.
Uh-huh.
It's never in our interest to ignore what God said, to negate what God said, and to substitute our own preference.
But it's illogical regardless.
My guess is when it comes to choosing who is his Mashiach, that God's capable of making that choice.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to tell us what choice he made. And he made his choice and he told us. And so, we want to, they say that when I say that Dode's the good shepherd,
mm-hmm.
it's what God said. He said he's the right shepherd. He's the correct one.
Well,
it is what it is.
Take it up with Yah.
And what I would really like, and I realize that we may be in a different place than some who will be listening.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would really encourage is people to take the time to think of why this is so. We're not diminishing Yosha.
That was my
Without Yosha, there's no Pesach.
Yeah. No, hardly.
Without Pesach, there's no doorway to life.
Who points to a door that ain't there, ain't open?
Without Yosha, Yahweh lied to Abraham. He didn't provide the Passover lamb.
Yeah.
Okay? Yosha is really, really, really important. But there's nothing Yosha wrote that can do us any good.
Mm-hmm.
Not a word. But there's 150 songs and 40 proverbs, Michelle, that Dode wrote that can transform our lives. I think the single most controversial thing that we're going to find as we move forward isn't the one that I hinted at, which is the realization that Dode is going to be bodily resurrected. That does not mean that the same molecules that comprise Dode prior to his death are going to be reconstituted. Doesn't mean that at all. In fact, the Dode prior to his death is never going to be seen again.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be the Dode that has the most powerful and resonant voice of anyone who ever lived, God's singer. It's going to be the Dode of intellect beyond anyone who's ever lived. It's the Dode with the strong right arm and the firm backbone. It's the Dode with the flaming red hair and the boyish good looks. It's the Dode who is articulate and courageous. It's Dode as he was at the prime of his life. But that's not the single most controversial thing. It's not even that Dode is the Messiah, according to Yahweh. It's not even that Dode is God's son, according to Yahweh. It's not even that Dode is the good shepherd, according to Yahweh. But Yahweh is going to tell us 3 times that Dode is our Savior. Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Yeah.
I know that's going to be a lot of people going to say, well, wait a minute. No. That applies to Yosha, no, because one place it has the person being saved, and as the process of being saved, becoming a savior. Yahweh didn't save Yosha. The idea is preposterous. It specifically names Dode and says he's our savior. Now, how can that be? Who did Yosha quote when he was fulfilling the promise of the Passover lamb?
Dode, of course.
Who was the person that Yahweh says, that's my shepherd, going to lead my sheep, because that dude, he's got his act together. His judgment is sound. His reasoning is logical. He's well informed, and he understands.
And he's a deck.
It's Dode.
Yeah, Dode again.
And so it's Dode's lyrics of his songs that save us.
I think the best point that among many, one of the better points that you make is the simple fact that because we really have nothing in Hebrew, nothing that we could count on and prove to any degree, and the few things that we do have, you have Yosha pointing, don't come to me, go to the Torah. The whole Nicodemus. I know his name wasn't Nicodemus, but that's one name given. But don't. Why are you asking me? You remember the Sanhedrin. Right. You're supposed to know this stuff. Go back to the Torah and read it.
Read it.
I'm go to the Torah. Everything he said is always
That, by the way, is Asher. Asher is now fancying herself as a watchdog. The hair goes up on the back of her neck, and it started about 2 or 3 days ago, and she now fancies herself as a watchdog.
Oh, bless her.
And we don't really know if it's she hears sounds and she's scared and she wants to scare away who is ever scaring her, or she actually has the watchdog instinct. We don't quite know, but as of the last 2 or 3 days, Asher has become a guard dog.
All right.
Now she's taking her bone to the door, which is closed to my office.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, anyway,
life is good. Life is good.
All this is provable. All this is logical.
Yeah, all of it's provable. So it's where the words lead, and there's no reason for us to be anything but confident in them and boisterous in them, and resolute in them. This is what the words say. And I would strongly recommend doing the same thing we've done. Just follow them. Go where they lead.
Yes.
Understand that this is what Yahweh wants. If Yahweh wants to make a big deal out of Dod and to say, he's the one calling my people home, he's the one that's going to be the king of Yisrael and of Goyim forever, that he is my beloved son, he is my anointed Messiah, he's the good shepherd, he's the branch, he is literally the hand of God, he's the Zeroah, the powerful shepherd, and he's the Savior. If God wants to say all those things about Dod, then it's in our interest not only to figure out why, but to benefit from it.
Yeah, embrace it.
Right? Share it, celebrate it, benefit from it, and don't do it blindly. Take the time to understand why God is not elevating his status through Yosha, why it's not in God's nature to do that, why it doesn't fit God's purpose to do that, and why doing it for this flawed individual who was just uncommonly brilliant. I was had a reason to share with somebody the other day, Kirk, that there were reasons that I had someone, and I think wrongly, say something disparaging about me. And I wanted to point out, because I have lived such an uncommon life and building not only businesses, but now I'm devoting this time to exposing, condemning Islam, and now exposing, condemning all religions, and while exposing and celebrating Yah's word, that in doing all of those things, the things that I have done that can be interpreted negatively, while they could be many, need to be viewed in concert with the things that I've done that have made a profound and positive difference in people's lives and in the world. I said, this is the way that we have forgotten, and I have forgotten to a large extent, to look at Dod. We have a tendency to look at the bad things that Dod did, like with Uriah and having him killed so he could take Bathsheba. The fact that he did not avenge the rape of his daughter by a son. He did not properly deal with his third son's usurping his power through a coup. There are lots of things that Dod did that we look at and say, that's really not so cool, Dod. What are you thinking there? The choice when Yahweh says you have 3 choices, and the choice he made cost so many people their lives. But you have to put that in context with being the single most articulate person in the world about the single most important subject in the world, and of writing these magnificent songs so that we could come to know Yahweh and celebrate eternal life with him. And you have to put that in context with defeating God's people's worst enemy, and then defending God's people, and then uniting God's people, and then establishing the place for God's home among his people. And you put Dod's indiscretions amongst this great contribution, they're not even a rounding error.
Well,
that's how we should look at. That's why Yahweh looks at Dode and says, "Yeah, okay, yeah, he did some stuff that it was bad, but look at all of the magnificent stuff this man did."
Yeah. No, it's I'm a little lost for words, but it's still. You look at that whole body of work, and I mean, to this day, Psalms and Psalms and Psalms, and people gravitate to them, even when they're poorly translated. There's enough there.
I'm here to tell you that there were three Zeruah: Moshe, Dode, and Yosha.
Oh.
Three Zeruah.
Right.
And of those three Zeruah, the most beloved is Dode.
Yes.
The most prolific in terms of information that we've been given is Dode. Mm-hmm. Now, personally, I think that Dode is the greatest of the prophets. I think that Yahweh would beg to differ and say that Moshe is the greatest of the prophets. And what Moshe did in Dabadim, and what Moshe did in finally acquiescing to what God wanted and going into Israel, into Mizraim, to liberate Yah's people, stunningly magnificent. But Moshe wasn't allowed into the Promised Land.
Right.
Dode built his home on Moriah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at the comparison. Couldn't be more vivid. Yeah. Yosha was tortured and killed as the Passover lamb. Dode was the king of Israel and will return to be the king of Israel. Lived a full and magnificent life. Yosha was so uncommon that no one would ever even look at him a second time. Dode was the most beautiful man, probably who ever lived. There's something extraordinary here, and while I don't give a hoot for Goyim and religious Christians and all that sort of thing who can't get past Dode with the slingshot,
too bad.
For Yisrael and for Yehudah, this is the ultimate godsend.
Yes.
This is telling you your decision about Yosha, and with all the hell you've been gone through with being accused of killing God and of being taunted by the dead God on the stick, and being told that this individual is the Messiah when he didn't meet the criterion because he was not a Gabor. And now I'm telling you, you don't have to accept him. The guy who you need to listen to and respond to is Dode. He's calling you from your heart. That should be such music to the ears of Yisrael and Yehudah. Even if you have to listen to the story being told by a lowly goy.
That's kind of the irony of that. We're quite good, actually.
That's delightful.
Yeah.
It is delightful.
No. Well,
and that's why I want to tell those that are listening to us that are part of the family, Kirk, that don't like Dode being elevated this way and Yosha being diminished in this way. And I'm going to say, well, there's no way to lift up the importance of Dode beyond what's appropriate, and there's no way to diminish the appropriateness of focusing on Yosha beyond what is what we have done. It's impossible.
Yeah. No, I think this is all true.
Well,
as best as we can describe it, best as you can describe it, the best whatever you do. You know, it's really this is the real deal.
And it's magnificent. And it's magnificent for every possible reason. And one of those reasons is Dode is the antidote for Christianity. He's proof that Paul lied.
Well, that's on all my little notes in the margin as I'm reading this stuff. I'm saying, well, that kills Paul. That kills
Paul. Yeah, it's the antidote for Christianity. And Dode is proof positive that you can do magnificent things in concert with Yahweh and be imperfect.
Mm-hmm. Thank goodness.
Yeah. Even I can be used.
Yeah.
You know? Dode's proof of that.
What a great trip.
It is a great journey, and so we'll pick up on this next week.
Mm-hmm.
But it is really, really, really good, and we're in for a treat in terms of what God has to say.
I'm gonna have 2 files on my desk here when we're talking. I'll have back to around page, what is that, about 56 or 58 or something, and then I'll have the other file just in case you can't stand it.
Yeah, I think we're on page 90 something, almost 100 of the first 2 on Moab. There's 2 chapters on Moab now.
2 parts, but we're right there at what is it? We're starting back on 3:1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll probably refer to the first 5 Mizmor and what they lead us to, because it's profound.
It is.
God's not interested in moot messengers.
No, that's good. Yeah, it's all good, man. This has really been a trip.
It's all good.
I think.
All right, Kirk. Well, my pleasure to be with you. My best to Terry, and I'll look forward to being with you this time next week.
Thank you.
May God bless.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Good night.